Welcome to the Church of Fire. Today, as you guys can see, I'm out here at the church property. We're about 20 minutes away from our Sunday sermon. Today we're actually doing it 1 hour earlier. We're doing it at 5 p.m. Opposed to usual 6 p.m. Just because Brother Alex have some stuff to do. But before that, I decided to make this quick video and basically glorifying the work of God. Glorifying the work of God in the sense that a lot of times, I mean most of the times, especially whenever we see something as a miracle, being against all odds, something that is, well, if you take your time, sit down and try to logically reason, right, and think about the outcomes, think about the possibilities in a certain situation. Most of the times it seems like it's completely impossible. Well, it's just not gonna work. It's just never going to happen. It's just, there is no way for something like this to happen. There is no way for something like this to exist or be humanly possible. Right? I mean, that's, after all, that's how we really define miracles. And in most of the cases, God's work is really miracles. A lot of times, of course, it's slow, it's consistent, it's very precise, it's very logical, analytical. But a lot of times, it's very, very much against all odds. And if you look at the Bible, if you look at the characters, if you look at some of the stories, I mean, think about the story of Moses, right? How pretty much everything that he was doing and the outcomes were against the odds. I mean, some things that just were happening were truly God's miracles. There was no way that something like that could have happened and the outcome was that way if it wasn't for God's involvement, God's miracles. And the same thing with Noah. I mean, think about that outcome, right? No way, against all odds. Think about Sarah and Abraham, against all odds. Think about Jacob, think about David, against all odds. And usually, whenever I do these kind of videos, usually I bring up the verses, I bring up the Bible, I bring up the stories from the Bible, the characters from the Bible, because I want to show you things from the biblical perspective, right? And help you kind of apply it to your own understanding, to your own work, to your own life. But today I wanted to give you from my own experience, from my own personal perspective, my testimony, how I became Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, against all odds. Now, usually I don't do that, but in this video I decided to, because just to make it a little bit more personal, a little bit more relatable, because I mean, we can talk about all of the biblical stories day and night, but all of these stories, they happened thousands and thousands of years ago. So it was a different time, it was different, people lived a different way, people had certain different traditions, different cultures, different understanding, right? It's still relatable and it's still applicable today, but it's much easier to relate when someone is talking about in the present moment, and not exactly the present moment, but in our time. And that would be, for me, that would be 22 years ago when I realized my calling, when really I really did not do anything. It was all God's work, it was all God showing me where I am supposed to go. And so the story goes, like I said, 22 years back, I was on the verge of becoming 13 years old, of turning 13 years old, and I am from the country that was for 1200 years, about 1200 years. It was Islamic State. It was a Muslim country, and then the country became part of USSR. And as some of you know, during USSR times, USSR was the very first country that legalized propaganda that encouraged atheism. It has never been done before, and that was actually implemented into the constitution. So that's how important atheism was to the government, USSR, basically government, Bolshevik, right? So in schools, in colleges, at the workplaces, which all of that belonged to the government, in the grocery stores, which also belonged to the government, you could see that propaganda that was promoting basically atheism. So there was no Christianity, there was no Islam. Yes, there was religion, but it was heavily suppressed. So, for example, compared to about 10 years after separation from the USSR, while during USSR it was about 500 mosques that my country had, 10 years after we separated from USSR, it was about 50,000 mosques. So you see how heavily this was suppressed. And it wasn't just for Islam, it was the same thing for Christianity. You couldn't find any religious material anywhere in schools, in the libraries, it doesn't matter. There were no Bibles, there were no Qurans. So all of the religion was suppressed. So if you hear someone say something like Soviet era Christian or USSR era Christian, you should know that this is the type of person that wants to believe, that kind of puts himself or herself into the category of Christians, right? But they're not, they would never, it's hard for them. It's very hard for them because that's how they were raised, that's how they were brought up, all right? Same thing, raised, brought up. Basically, not just by parents, but by the government itself, by the culture around them, showing them that yes, you want to believe in God, that's your business, whatever. Just don't talk about it. Don't try to tell anyone about it. Don't read no religious material. Don't go to mosque. Don't go to church. Don't do any of that stuff. All right? So that's kind of that. So basically, they would say, yes, I'm a Christian, but they would never read the Bible. They don't really understand really anything, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. They don't know the biblical stories, maybe just the most famous names and stuff like that, but not really in detail. Anyway, this is the kind of place that I was growing up in. Like I said, there was no Bibles, not in schools, not in libraries, not really anywhere. So you grow up knowing that yes, there is such a thing, there is such a book known as Bible. Yes, there was a guy named Jesus, but I'm not entirely sure if he was real. I'm not entirely sure if this is historical or this is just folklore. And you see some people that are still confused. They think the story of Jesus is folklore. I mean, it's pretty silly, but there are people out there that still believe it because these beliefs are so deeply rooted within them that they never realize how important it is to just sit down and do your own research and actually learn something, learn the information about really history, humanity, right? So this is the kind of place that I was growing up in, and obviously I didn't really associate myself very much with Islam, just because the household that I was growing up in, my father, he's kind of associates himself with Muslim religion. He would say that he's Muslim, and my mom, she would say that she's Christian, but neither of them, that they're communist era, USSR era Muslims and Christians. So again, they would put themselves in that classification, but they never really read the religious material. They never really went to church or the mosque. They never really studied anything. So that's how I was growing up, and it was I was about to turn 13, It was spring, and actually I was already 13, but it was about to be March 21st. It was like a week or two before March 21st. And March 21st is, as some of you know, it's a very, very important day in a lot of calendars. It's the first day of spring, and it's considered to be a new year for a lot of cultures around the world, and including the country where I'm from is considered to be a very, very important day. So on that day, when you celebrate that day being 13, right? So let's say you turned 13 last year or this year, doesn't matter, and it's March 21st, it's thought to be where a child becomes responsible now. Now they're not just a child anymore. Now they're kind of a child with responsibilities, child adult with responsibilities. So I was getting into that, and I was really nervous because, you know, I was thinking to myself like, wow, I'm gonna be taking on all of these responsibilities. It's kind of scary. What am I gonna do? I don't know. And we just moved into my father's parents' house, so my grandparents from my father's side, and it was a big house. It was a very, very old house, and there was one of the parts of the house was like a very old kitchen that it was just an outdoors, like super old kitchen, kind of creepy, honestly. If you go inside, it was old, it was very dark, very kind of like small, and as part of the construction in the house, my parents, they were tearing this kitchen down because it was old. It wasn't being used anymore. So I was there playing basically in the ruins of the old kitchen, and was thinking to myself, wow, how am I going to deal with all this responsibility that I'm about to get? I'm 13 and it's March 21st soon. What am I going to do? And all of a sudden, in the ruins, in the pile of ruins, the rocks, whatever, the remains of old kitchen, I see a little blue corner of something sticking out, just bright blue something. So I walk up to it, I pull on that little paper corner, and I pull out a book out of ruins. And the book is a kid's Bible. It's kid's Bible, it is in Russian, and it's just the New Testament, but it is, because it's for kids, it's rewritten. So it's written in much more kid-friendly version, right? So that the kid can read it and understand it. It has pictures, and on the very front it has Jesus. And interestingly, I'm looking at it, I never seen a Bible, I never seen Jesus, but I'm looking at it and I realize who that is. So I take the Bible to my mom and I show it to my mom and say, hey, look what I found. She couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe it because you couldn't find books like this anywhere in the country. Not in any library, not in any school, not in any kindergarten, nowhere, not even in nothing. We only had one church in the whole city, and the church is like, it looks like prison from the outside because it has like barbed wire, and in order to get inside, you actually have to ring a doorbell because the people who work in the church, they're kind of scared for their lives from vandalism, so they don't just let anybody in. And here I am finding a kid's Bible in Russian with pictures in the ruins of old kitchen in the Muslim household in predominantly Muslim country, and with the history of communism, atheism, right? Communist atheism. So my mom looked at it, she couldn't believe I found it there for a while, but when she finally accepted that fact, she said, well, if you found it, you gotta read it. And so I read it, and here I am, 22 years later, Christian, against all odds. So whenever it feels like you have a task in front of you, maybe you don't have a task in front of you. Maybe you look at your life and you think, well, what am I gonna do? I don't know where to go, I don't know what to do. And everything seems to be against the odds. Just know that if God wants something for you, it will happen against all odds. just like it happened for Moses, just like it happened for Abraham and Sarah, just like it happened for Jacob, just like it happened for David and Noah. I messed up the chronological order there. And just like it happens for ourselves, in our own personal lives up until today. Now, you've probably seen a video that we recently posted on our YouTube channel, where a former radical Muslim converted to Christianity because, against all odds, the things that happened in his life showed him what he is supposed to do, where he needs to be. And I mean, it's a beautiful testimony. And I recommend, if you haven't seen it, definitely check that video out. It's posted, it's live on our channel. And if you have a testimony that you would like to share, definitely share it, because hearing, you know, it's one thing doing something and being a certain way and reading something that may be biblical, may be part of the scripture, but it's completely another thing where you hear somebody's testimony and you realize that, wow, this man or this woman, they're just like me, you know. They're just like me. They're living a similar life, and look at the miracles that are happening in their life, and it's truly amazing. So we're about to set up on our stage over there. Make sure to subscribe to check out our sermon. I'm not sure what Brother Alex wants to have a sermon today about, but we will be posting it hopefully in the next few days. Thank you very much, guys, for watching. This was Church of Fire, and I'll see you guys in the next video.